Naponjo, colleagues from all over the Pacific, all over the world, Bula, Talofa, and thank you for joining us in this online workshop, tackling marine litter, from coastal cleanup to decision making. Firstly, just on behalf of the SPREP Director General, Mr. Zephaniah Nawandra, we would like to welcome you, and we are pleased to provide you this training through the SWAP project with funding support from the AFD. SPREP is not able to do this alone, and we are very pleased to partner with many partners. But for this workshop, we are pleased to partner with the Sustainable Coastlines, with Mr. Camden Howard, and also the Vanuatu Environmental Science Services, Ms. Christina Shaw, and also with the Ocean Conservancy with Mrs. Sarah Kolar. I think that for data is very important. I think that data is one of the 5 pillars for enabling the circular economy, from moving away from a make, use, and discard system to a circular system of managing resources. And we won't be able to do that without the data and without knowing what our actions are doing. Because the end goal, I think, finally, a true reflection of the management and the systems that we put in place is the rubbish that ends up on our beaches and on our shores. I think it's very important to know what is ending up on our beaches and our shores to be able to manage the resources properly. I'm excited about this workshop. I think that many of us have taken part in cleanups, either in school, in communities, or just cleaning up around your house. And many times you wonder whether you're cleaning up just for the sake of cleaning up, or whether your actions is changing behavior of someone else, either cleaning up with you, or watching you, or seeing that the area is clean. So I think that having this workshop is very important to enable that we're not just cleaning up for the sake of cleaning up, but we're using the data from cleanup to inform the management decisions and the management processes that we are putting in place. So I'm very excited about this workshop, and I'd like to thank all the facilitators for enabling this. I'd like to also thank the coordinator for the project, Ms. Julie, for hard work in making this workshop possible, but also through enabling the priority for the SWAP, which is plastics, looking at used oil management, looking at disaster waste, and also for sustainable financing. So there are many areas that the SWAP project does. And this is part of the work that you do, I'm sure. It's not just looking at one area of the waste issue, but looking at several areas of the waste, and it's an integrated process. And I'm happy to see that many of the colleagues around the Pacific are in small island states where we deal with many waste issues, and many of these issues are in our face. Like we don't have to send, or we're not able to send waste far away to be discharged or to be disposed. We take it to the rubbish tip, which is probably just a household or just a next door. So I'm very happy to be able to open this workshop with a few opening remarks, to wish you all well, to thank the participants, and to thank Julie for this workshop. I wish you well, and with that, I will hand it back to the facilitator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony, for these opening remarks, and welcome to our speakers and all of you for attending this workshop on marine litter. I remember when I was living in Martinique Island in the Caribbean on the other side of the world. One day I went hiking with some friends and on a coastal area through mangroves and beaches, and these areas were full of plastics debris such as bags, toys, bottles, fishing nets, and so on. But these areas were very isolated and they were only accessible by hiking, and there were no inhabitants, so it was obvious that a lot of this waste was arriving by sea. So this situation shows us that all coastlines, even in isolated places, can be impacted by marine debris. So I'm therefore delighted to share this workshop on marine litter with all of you to discuss this issue and how we can get together to tackle this problem, at least at the regional level. So we are going to start this workshop with a brief overview on the situation and the impacts of this pollution on the environment, but also, unfortunately, on human health. This presentation should have been led by Ms. Susana Telacao, the SPREP Solid Waste Management Advisor, but unfortunately, she is not able to join us from Tuvalu, so I will present on her behalf. And we will then continue with a presentation from Camden Howitt, co-founder and programs director of Sustainable Coastlines, on how to raise awareness of this issue. This will be followed with a presentation by Ms. Sarah Kolar, outreach manager from Ocean Conservancy, who will talk about a global initiative, which is the International Coastal Cleanup. And this presentation will be supplemented with an experience sharing from Dr. Christina Shaw, CEO of the Vanuatu Environmental Science Society, who has been involved with her association in beach cleanups for many years. And also she will share her experience on how these activities, including data collection and data sharing, participated in the development of a single-use plastic ban policy in Vanuatu. And finally, we will end this first phase of the workshop with the second presentation by Camden Howitt on the value of conducting waste audits during cleanups and sharing the data through a regional or international network, and how waste audits can be used as a decision-making tool to implement actions or policies to reduce marine debris pollution. And we will end this workshop with a discussion session to share your own experience or ask questions to our speakers or provide comments or thoughts on this issue. So please use the chat if you have questions or comments during the presentations, and we'll respond during the discussion session. And for the French speaker, you can share your question or comments in French, and I will do the translation. So feel free to use the chat during the presentations. And also for your information, the SWAP project, which organized this workshop, is planning to follow it up with a training on how to prepare and conduct a cleanup campaign that includes a statistical waste audit and data sharing. We don't know now the date, but the training could be scheduled in June or July. So you are welcome to join us for this training as well. We will keep you posted when the date and time are confirmed. But before we start the workshop, we will be happy if you could turn on your video for a group photo. And after that, we will introduce the workshop by sharing with you a video produced during the International Coastal Cleanup Day 2021 with the support of the Vanuatu Environmental Science Society. So thank you for attending this workshop, and I look forward to this interactive discussion. Let's get started, and please, Hermes, if you have the on for the group photo. Thank you.
Every year, first hemi part for one international event, hemi international coastal cleanup event. Since 2015, they've been making cleanup, yeah.
So, we play part of cleanup campaign today. We vest with them weekend and we been organize them. So, never we come inside them, blow work with them all youth, blow make them say, we play learn blow them, we play save play one part.
Kamu isara mivla all groups, all three, only give him out all plastics, all plastic, blow full of different kind totis and all plastic, blow twisty or biscuits, sell one different place, all tin with all bottle one different place.
Mi vlai pick him up all plastic, all bottle, any kind toti where all man only carelessly sack him, but without knowing that lo and lo de, mi sabe affect them pick one environment blimia.
Mi fly target solota plante pro all coastal area, pro mi fly cleaning, pro mi fly say pollution where all man only make all man-made pollution, and mi sabe affect them all sea creature, all marine lives where mi stop lo salwater.
2 or 3 years past, government has been taking initiative to block all plastic bags especially. We cut actually we can something from we less and less, we find them less more something else or solota.
When we first started doing cleanups, it was before anyone had even thought about banning the single-use plastics in Vanuatu yet. So when we first started, our #1 item on the list was always plastic shopping bags. See now, that has dropped off down the list completely.
Oslo plastic mi fly fine hemi nomo blol plastic kakai mi karelo sto bel plastic pa ko lipin panem mi no fine plante lo solo tatete.
The data we collect each year can hopefully show 2 things. One is what are the problematic items in our country, and 2, when the bans come in, is it made an effect on the amount of litter that we're finding?
All totally important to us from only save inform me plo look say okay one decision we must make plo stop all use plo different kind plastic where save cattle part impact plo environment me.
Mi like mas plus share information dalo everyone say you mi stop leave mo you mi cut one connection ya with the environment blo you mi mo you mi niti mol keta to niti mi blo protect mol keta you mi na you mi should protect mol keta.
Planteta you mi man Vanuatu mi sa ting nating lo totia. You mi kakai any something you mi just sakano mo lo site lo road or wherever place. But you must put in mind that times you kakai or something or to do with them plastic, make sure you drop them straight lo place where you supposed to sack them like.
Thank you, Hermes, for the video, and thank you to Christina for the production of this video. We were really delighted. Coastal Cleanup Day 2021, and we produced other videos. So if you are interested, they are all available on SPREP YouTube channel. So if you want, you can have a watch on the other videos. Some videos are produced in French also, so have a look. Yeah, and so maybe we can start the workshop with the introduction and the presentation of the overview of the current situation. So Hermes, if you can share the presentation, please. Yeah, thank you. So to introduce the workshop, I will start with a brief overview of the current situation regarding marine litter and marine pollution in the world. What are the sources of its production, and what are the potential impacts on environment, health, economy? Yeah. Next slide, please. And so to do so, I have mainly based my presentation on a global assessment of marine litter and plastic pollution published by UNEP in 2021. So if you are interested in learning more about this problem, you can refer to the report. So the cover page is shown on this slide, and the report is available on internet. So you can also read the document. It's very interesting. Yes, next slide, please. So first of all, what are the sources of marine litter? In fact, there are many sources of marine pollution. It can be simply due to our behaviors when waste is dumped or abandoned in the environment, either on the ground, and then the waste will arrive at sea under the effect of wind and rains, or directly when the waste is thrown into the sea from the coast or from boats. This can also be due to mismanagement of landfills, which can lead to leakage, especially in illegal sites without controls, or to mismanagement of wastewater treatment systems, which can also lead to leakage of sludge that can be contaminated with heavy metals, especially when it comes from the wastewater treatment systems of chemical companies. There is a famous example in the south of France where a chemical company legally dumped red slugs for years into the Mediterranean Sea. And marine pollution can also come from runoff from agriculture fields, which may contain pesticides or fertilizers. This can also be caused by accidental events at sea, like with oil or chemical spills from ships damaged at sea. We can see on the top picture a French beach contaminated by an oil spill. And unfortunately, extreme events such floods, storms, or tsunamis can release large volumes of debris into the oceans. And finally, one of the new problems that has been of increasing interest in recent years is the presence of nurdles on beaches, as also known as pre-production pellets, and invisible in the bottom photo. These lightweight pellets are a major source of microplastic pollution because they can easily leak during transport or handling. Then they are transferred by the wind or float to rivers, oceans, and beaches. So for example, in May 2021, Sri Lanka was hit by a spill of 87 containers full of nurdles when a container ship sank into the Indian Ocean. And since that disaster, billions of nurdles have washed up along hundreds of miles of the country's coastlines. And this event has been classified by the UN as a Sri Lanka's worst maritime disaster. Thus, we can see that the sources of marine pollution are numerous, and the priority is to find ways to reduce them, either through international conventions or local or regional policies, or by strengthening the capacity of staff operating sites like landfills. This can also involve strengthening technologies to improve the treatment of landfill leakage or sludge, for example. But above all, it will require raising public awareness and behavior changes. Next slide, please. So if we have a look on the current situation, it appears that a major source of marine pollution is related to plastics. The UNEP report states that the amount of plastics in the oceans have been estimated to be between 75 to 199 million tons. And the amount of plastic waste entering aquatic ecosystems could nearly triple from 9 million tons per year in 2016 to a projected 23 million tons per year by 2040. According to another report published by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, if the trend continues, plastics will outweigh fish in the oceans in 2050. And unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic increased this situation since large amounts of plastic waste from personal protective equipment and additional packaging were discarded in the environment. Next slide, please. And it should also be noted that marine litter is an international problem, not only because every country produces waste that can become marine litter, but also because of the transfer of litter from one island to another, and even from one continent to another, due to the movement of marine litter and plastics by tides, currents, waves, and winds. This transfer of waste can be highlighted by the existence of very large volume garbage islands that form in the oceans. Indeed, the natural systems of rotation of ocean currents can also lead to the accumulation of floating plastics in specific areas in the center of the vortex, including the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, whose surface is estimated to 1.6 million square kilometers, almost 7 times the surface of New Zealand. So the photo on the slide shows one of the 5 existing garbage patches on the world. And these plastic islands are far from the coast and therefore less visible than marine debris on our coast or beaches. But as you can imagine, they have a significant impact on aquatic life. Which brings us to the last part of my presentation. So next slide, please. Because first of all, marine litter has a direct impact on aquatic life through its lethal effects in marine mammals, turtles, birds, and fish, as well as corals. Their effects include entanglements, starvation, drowning, laceration internal tissues, smothering, and toxical damage. But marine litter can also have an indirect impact on climate change. Indeed, plastics can also alter the global carbon cycle through their effect on plankton and marine ecosystems, such as mangroves, seagrasses, corals, etc. And they may also reduce the adaptation and resilience of these ecosystems to climate change. Next slide, please. Marine litter can also have a significant financial impact. It can have an impact on fisheries due to resource depletion when nesting or feeding areas are destroyed or polluted, but also due to the altered quality of the fish. In addition, a place affected by marine litter can lead to a decrease in tourist interest and impact the income of local communities that depend on these economic activities, but also organizing cleanup campaigns has a cost. Coastal cleanups have a limited financial impact, especially when it is conducted by associations and volunteers. But cleanups at sea or in the oceans, like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch mentioned previously, carried out by boats like the one in the picture, is very expensive. It requires the purchase of equipment, including this kind of boats, fuel costs, salaries, maintenance, etc. So the financial impact all around the world can be very significant. And finally, next slide, please. Plastic pollution has a serious impact on human health. As plastics break down in the marine environment, they transfer microplastics, chemicals, metals, and micropollutants into waters, sediments, and ultimately into marine food chains. For example, on the slide, there is a photo of plastic pieces found in a fish. In addition, microplastics serve as a vector for pathogenic organisms that are harmful to humans, fish, and aquaculture stocks. When microplastics are ingested, they can cause changes in gene and protein expression, inflammation, disruption of feeding behavior, decreases in growth, changes in brain development, and reduced filtration and respiration rates. So human uptake of microplastic via seafood is therefore likely to pose a serious threat to coastal communities, such as in the Pacific Islands, where marine species are widely eaten. And I will end my presentation by sharing with you the findings of a study conducted in the Netherlands and published in the Environment International magazine 2 weeks ago. The research team analyzed blood samples from 22 adults, and the result revealed the presence of microplastics in the blood of 17 of the 22 people tested. So we all potentially have microplastics in our blood, and I'm not sure that's a good news. So now that I'm done with this overview of the problem and this outstanding question about the future we want for the health of our children and other generations to come, I'm going to turn it over to Camden from Sustainable Coastlines, who is going to tell us about the tools for awareness. Thank you, Camden, the floor is yours.
Hi there, can you hear me? Great, thank you. Well, I'm pleased that I get to share some more positive news after Julie's very in-depth and unfortunately depressing state of affairs as it currently is. We all know we need to do more to solve these problems, and hopefully that's why we are all here today. So kia ora, nisa bula, tarofa lava, malo alele, kia orana, hello, bonjour, and hi. I'm Camden Howard. I'm the co-founder of Sustainable Coastlines. So I want to talk today about citizen science and work in a space that can inspire litter action. So how can we solve these problems that Julie just introduced to us? I'm going to cover 3 key topics today, and I will have a chance to go into a deeper dive in my second presentation as well. And the 3 key topics are, firstly, a quick introduction to ourselves, Sustainable Coastlines, and Litter Intelligence, the program I'm here to talk to you today about. Secondly, a quick introduction to community collaboration and the key for communities to be involved, and how the key really aspect of that is connecting back to place and connecting to nature. And then thirdly, I want to talk about awareness and action, some examples, really positive examples of where we're seeing that action happen. So firstly, Sustainable Coastlines, we are a charity based in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We exist to support communities to prevent litter and restore waterways. We also have a chapter in Papua New Guinea and in Hawaii. So we work across the Pacific and have worked in 11 different countries Pacific-wide since 2009. Predominantly our work in the Pacific has been on beach cleanups and litter awareness and education. And we're moving much more into the program I'm speaking to today, which allows monitoring and through that action on litter. So litter intelligence itself, for years, since 2009, working in this space, we've seen communities that outside of beach cleanups, they're heavily affected by marine litter, but often aren't able to influence and inform the decisions that have led to that problem. And on the other side, that lead to the solutions to those problems. What we've designed here is a program that is a citizen science program, so community science, and an education program as well that allows communities to inspire and inform better decisions for a world without litter. The core to that program is that we enable communities to collect data, so really rigorous citizen science collected data that is long-term to understand the problem, then to gain insights both through their experience in nature and through the technology that we've developed to gain access to the data, to look at comparisons and look at long-term trends. And then finally, taking action, and that's what we're here today to talk about. The program has a large part of it is dedicated to schools education, a very holistic inquiry-based program that connects students with nature, and then a library of inspiring community actions. And we hope that other communities can take a look at those actions and be inspired to do similar. And I'll speak through some examples of those as I go through this presentation. So firstly, on collaboration, we worked in the design process of this program, Litter Intelligence, with a number of different government, corporate and community stakeholders from early on. And I think the learning behind that is that working with people in the design phase of any program really gains buy-in. When we're speaking about data and monitoring from a community level, those programs need to be designed, for the community, but also with the community. And so an outtake from that is, if we're trying to solve these problems and raise awareness, is to make sure that we don't sort of push programs onto communities without involving them in the design phase. The key collaborators for sustainable coastlines in this program nationally have been really the community groups that do the monitoring, that get out there, clean up beaches, and alongside that, pick up litter and monitor and report those findings. Without those collaborators, we don't have a program and we don't have monitoring. So their connection to that place and their selection of a beach or a place where they want to monitor is critical, because they're connected to that place. They're connected to the community, and they want to connect more with the people around them. Those are critical enablers for taking action. It's having a support community around you and having a real emotional connection to that place. In terms of progress to date, the important number here is the volunteer hours that have been put in. So across all of the work we've done in Aotearoa in New Zealand on this program, and across the Pacific to a small extent, volunteers have put in over 15,000 hours. And that's them engaged in nature, outside, understanding what that problem is, but also speaking with others, engaging with others in their community about how they can solve that problem. People protect what they love. This quote here is a favorite of mine from very early on in our history as a charity. And if people aren't connected to their local spot, if people aren't connected to nature, then they're not inspired to want to take care of that. So what we're talking about is not just data, is not just monitoring itself, is connection to a local place, engagement with it. I think in this modern world, we find ourselves on screens and inside too much. I know I probably do. And getting back out there and reinvigorating that love for a place gives us that connection. So this is why we involve communities in the science, as opposed to getting scientists to go around and run these studies. It's about engagement with that place. It's a mantra that's inspired us right from the beginning. So I want to share a few success stories that we've seen over our time running this program, Litter Intelligence. And as you can see, we have community and non-profit groups that are from being involved in simply monitoring and collecting litter and data on litter at their local beach, are taking actions in their community. We have schools that have become citizen or student journalists, writing about the issue to raise awareness within their own communities. This was a group of 8 to 10-year-olds that managed to get a newspaper article published on the front page of the local paper. That's pretty inspiring for those kids, but brings that message to a really wide audience. We have a group on the left here that created a mural, a large artwork on the public space closest to their local beach, to show the public their connection to that place, in the hope that the public will treat that place better and not litter it. We have great examples of businesses changing their approaches to reduce and remove products that are polluting their local beaches. We had groups that found significant amounts of, on the left-hand side here, foam plastic squares. They're used in construction. They sort of separate pieces of glass when they're being moved around. And our groups were finding hundreds of these littered all over the local beaches. So talked to a local glass manufacturer and asked them to change that plastic foam to something biodegradable, to cork. And that's a national glass manufacturer that's been able to implement that solution nationwide. I'm hoping we'll see a lot fewer of these on the beach. This is the exact action we need. On the right-hand side there, we have a group that noticed a lot of shotgun waddings, plastic shotgun casings on their beach, and approached a local shooting range and asked them if they could change the products they were using from a plastic to a biodegradable, a cardboard product, which they were able to do. Again, these are citizens seeing the problem, collecting data on it, and taking action to solve that problem. We have a business partner of ours that noticed that they were consuming huge amounts of plastic waste, wrapping pallets for shipping, and decided to create a reusable solution to wrap their pallets there. So reducing waste, reducing costs. And since doing that, I think they've saved over 200 kilometers worth of plastic wrapping that they were using and disposing single use each time. And we've passed that solution on to other manufacturers so that they can copy that action. And that is really what we want to see, is replication at scale of these actions. And one final example, because I know we're running out of time, is a straw survey. We simply presented data to businesses and cafes along the waterfront in Wellington, our capital city, by showing them the amount of straws we were finding in beach cleanups and our data. They used that as leverage to ban the straws within that restaurant chain. They had 26 different cafes nationwide, which were all able to ban, and 200 restaurants internationally where they banned straws. So these are solutions that at the grassroots level, one small change really ladders up to long-term business change, product change, and in the end, less litter on beaches. Media is another key avenue for gaining awareness at scale, and we've managed over the years to gain over 120 million views to this litter problem by raising that at a national and international level. So I want to thank you all for your time on this. I'm able to dive a bit deeper into the program in my next presentation. So I will speak again then. Thank you.
Thank you, Camden, for this presentation and sharing with us experience and stories and how sustainable coastlines engaged people, communities, and also businesses in protection of their own environment and in behavior changes. Thank you. And now I will invite Sarah Kolar from the Ocean Conservancy for her presentation on the International Coastal Cleanup Program, including data collection and data sharing. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Julie. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you to SPREP, to SWAP, for inviting me to take part in the workshop today. It's a pleasure to see a number of faces on the screen and to get to reconvene with some familiar faces as well. My name is Sarah Kolar. I act as the outreach manager for the International Coastal Cleanup, which I'll be talking about today with you all. And I'm with Ocean Conservancy. We are a nonprofit, non-governmental organization. We are based in Washington, D.C., United States, where we do advocacy work around policy change domestically, and excitedly working to get into that international policy space as well. But we are about a 45-year-old organization, and I have the pleasure of representing really a network of both internal, but many more external partners who make the international coastal cleanup happen, which is what I'll be talking about today, and is really the backbone of my program, the Trash Free Seas program. But I did just want to share a few thumbnails on the slide here of some of the other work that colleagues in my organization take part in. And we really are an organization striving to help protect the ocean's most fragile ecosystems and really working against the greatest threats to our global ocean. We kind of refer to it as one connected global ocean. And of course, climate touching all of these issues. But today I'll be talking about our Trash Free Seas program. And here's our mission. And I'd like to put this up because right away, first three words are all about empowering community or citizen science. So truly the cleanup and a lot of the materials and resources that I hope are exciting to you all today were really formed with that in mind, and that effort and that passion of communities taking charge and identifying the problems, tracking the problems where they live, is really the cornerstone and sets up the rest of the work that we're able to do. Julie set up the problem and the breadth of the problem beautifully, and Camden shared so much of the wonderful solutions taking place through Sustainable Coastlines. And I just hope to add to that and hopefully help share a few more resources that might be helpful for you if you're, whether you've maybe done cleanups your whole life, or maybe you're brand new to cleanups and you just need some help on where to start. I hope that these resources can be helpful to you too. So the International Coastal Cleanup, I will affectionately call it the ICC because I know I only have 20 minutes, so I will try to keep it brief. But there's rich history here, and it's really a movement that is now sort of taken hold on its own. And Ocean Conservancy helps manage it. We like to see ourselves as kind of the hub, and all the spokes are kind of expanding from that, but we're trying to keep a unified voice and messaging year to year of this annual event. Traditionally, it does take place on or around the third Saturday in September. But in recent years, and obviously with this pandemic that we're living through, the cleanup itself is now more of a season, and it really is an effort that we capture this global snapshot of the marine debris and the plastic pollution problem that time of the year. But all of the resources that I'm going to share with you can really be used for year-round cleanups as well. And we open up and we welcome international coastal cleanup events to happen in September, October, November, whatever works for you, because we know there are natural disasters that we're all working around, national and religious holidays, but really it's just this idea of global community getting out one day of effort globally, wherever you are located, inland waterways, no waterways at all, or the shorelines that many of your communities have. So I think we're entering the 37th year of the ICC. We've surpassed 17 million volunteers over the 36-year history, which is just incredible. 157 million kilos of trash. It's incredible work. It's exciting to see the tradition that it has started. We hear from families who year after year, they come back to cleanups, or they do a different cleanup spot in their community, and they bring their kids, and it's really become a community-owned event. And Ocean Conservancy is just trying to be the glue to keep it all together and to support the many issues and challenges that our partners face. What makes the International Coastal Cleanup special, at least in my mind, I'm a bit of a numbers geek and a data geek. So I was, everything that Camden was talking about with the litter intelligence and collecting the thorough data was really exciting to hear. And we're definitely in that camp as well. So we know that beach cleanups have been happening for decades and decades. What we're thankful for is that the folks at Ocean Conservancy who started the ICC from the beginning realized that we need to be tracking what we're finding and what we're removing from the environment as well. So that really is, that data collection aspect is the heartbeat of the ICC. And to, I guess, Christina's point in the video that we saw right at the beginning, it's twofold. It's understanding what the issues are in different communities across different geographies and across time. And then also, once we start implementing some of these solutions, such as bans, let's track them and see how effective they are. So we just find that the data are very important. So a lot of what I do on a day-to-day is just ensure that we have some of these data collection tools and resources available to anyone and everyone who wants to get involved in a cleanup. And I'll talk a little bit more about these now. But first, to take a step back, I have a number of links on my slides, but don't worry about writing those down. I'll share a PDF of all of these slides with you, so you can go in and just have the links available after the presentation. But we do have a lot of this information online. First and foremost, a cleanup leader toolkit. This is something that we've had for a number of years, and we benefit from learning from all of our partners around the world. getting together with them in person when we don't have a pandemic, but otherwise over Zoom. And we're constantly learning best practices and evolving what we do at cleanup events. So it's changed a lot over the years. Even the data card, the kind of light blue data card you see in the bottom right corner, that's our typical international coastal cleanup data card that used to have almost 200 items on it. Then we learned that's very much a burden for volunteers, and they get worn out pretty quickly. So we've learned over the years to kind of find that balance of let's have this be an important activity and exercise for volunteers, and let's collect important data in the meantime. So all of that information and wealth of knowledge we have in this cleanup leader toolkit. Great especially if you're brand new to cleanups, it'll walk through just things to consider for planning before, during, and after a cleanup event, with this idea of data collection in mind, and some options for how you or your volunteers could do that. We have some other resources as well. There's a map that we tend to populate with cleanup locations, upcoming cleanups. So it's a way for cleanup leaders like yourselves to post an upcoming cleanup and actually steer interested volunteers to your events. Right now during COVID, that's become more of a directing interested volunteers to partner organizations, and then they can learn more about events and updates to events given COVID through the partners directly. And we do have a brand collection or a waste audit data card as well. It's a little bit newer for us, and I know Camden's going to talk solely about waste audits. So I'll just mention that we have that as an option, but I'm thinking you're going to learn a lot more about that in a few minutes. And then we create a lot of these printed resources as well. You'll see they're very bright colored, fun, family friendly, really there to catch the volunteer's eye. And these are everything from that certificate, and the kind of in the middle there is on a standard piece of paper, but some of the other items are larger posters that you can actually request in print in about 20 different languages. We have at least our data card in about 5 or 6 languages for some of the other items that you see here. So the cleanup site captains, right? Like right out on the beach when volunteers are checking in and they're kind of hanging out and waiting to get started. There's some interesting information, and there's kind of educational moments and opportunities there that these posters are great for. And then other items like the image on the far right with the sea turtle hatchling, that's just a promotional flyer, just good old fashioned, get the word out in your community about an upcoming cleanup. And we print this in a number of languages as well, or share all of these items digitally so that you can enter in your own cleanup information and have it be part of that global international coastal cleanup kind of brand, but still give it the local flair. So back to the data card, here's just a few other examples of other languages, but really just what I want to focus on here is the type of data that we're talking about. So you'll see kind of in the bullets on the left, with any of our data collection tools, whether it's an app that I'm about to talk about in a minute or the data card, some of the kind of basic information that we're looking for, just where are you doing the cleanup? How many people are with you? What's the date of the cleanup? What sort of body of water are you near? All of this kind of high level basic information, that's kind of the bare minimum required to have like a cleanup sort of count or be added into the global database that we have. All the other information is on the flip side or the back side of this data card, and that is the item count information. So that's where we're getting into things like tallying individual bottle caps, food wrappers, the plastic grocery bags, all of those individual items that are being found. But the basics are kind of there on the front. And whether you're using the card or the app, all of that information is sort of asked for. So our app, there's a number of them out there. Ours is called CleanSwell, and we've been really excited with how this app has functioned. It's about 6 years old. It will soon be available in a dozen languages, and it's actually undergoing kind of an update or a refresh as we speak. So it's a little confusing here. I've got examples of like the old version, but then this screenshot in the center is what the new app will look like. And really what you see here, this kind of collection screen, it's really it. This is like what the volunteer would spend most of their time doing on the app, is just having these common trash items, icons in place, and literally just tapping them with your finger as you go along, and it's keeping record for you and for your team. So, best practice, even with a data card or with the app, I'm sure many of you know, but we always encourage not everybody has to be collecting data. It can be something that you do in small teams and you have just one data recorder doing that tracking for the larger team or group. So a lot more that I can talk about there with the app, but just encourage you to check it out. It is free. It's available to download on Android or Apple devices. It's something that we find youth are getting very excited to utilize, and it just simplifies the process as well. So if you're a cleanup leader, if your volunteers are using the app, then those data automatically submit into an online database that Ocean Conservancy manages. If you have the paper data cards, that's great too. That's always a good option. It just takes a little bit more. There's about one more step in there about like culminating the data together, getting it summarized, and then making sure that that data either gets to a country coordinator who organizes international coastal cleanup events in your country, or you could send any data straight to Ocean Conservancy to just make sure that those numbers get counted for that year's international coastal cleanup. So where do those data go? This is that database that I was just mentioning. It's free, open access, online system. My team and I spend a lot of time in here. It's busy during the International Coastal Cleanup months. There's a lot of data, a lot of cleanups that get entered in September, October, November. But really it is a year-round tool as well. And so you could do a cleanup with the CleanSwell app, and then 5 minutes later go on here on the database and you could zoom in and find your cleanup. So it's really cool that people in real time can see their impacts, see us collectively, what we're accomplishing. And what's really vitally important for us is that not only did we want these data to be accessible to you, our partners who are organizing these cleanup events, but for all of those other upstream solutions that Camden had already mentioned, things like policy change, science, new science around the issue. I think every day my team and I are getting requests for this sort of information, and we're constantly pulling data reports from this system to be used. So it's always something, when I'm leading a cleanup event with volunteers and some of them are like, do I have to collect data? I always encourage them and let them know your data are used right away. Like your data are very important. They don't just sit in a database collecting dust. They're used constantly and really helping us inform what in reality is a rather new science of plastic pollution. So again, a lot more that I can share there, but I'll have my email at the end, and I know I'm kind of giving a lot of information quickly. So if you have any questions about the data collection tools, the data card, the app, or the database, I'm always happy to talk further about that. And what I just mentioned, just a couple of examples that I always like to share of ways in which the data have been used. And to be honest, our team, I think this is only the tip of the iceberg. Our team hasn't done a great job over the years of tracking how exactly international coastal cleanup data and numbers have been used. But part of that is the beauty that the database is open access to all. So sometimes we don't even know when the data are being used to help implement a plastic bag levy in a country or a smoking ban on a particular stretch of beach, because it is an international data set and referred to every day. So we're trying to do better about keeping track of how the data are used so that we all can have these great examples and can look to these as evidence for further action in that regard. But I did just want to share a few that we know about. Finally, just a couple more slides left. I am the outreach manager, so I have to give a little plug about some of the educational materials that we also have that have really spun off and been inspired by data collected by volunteers during this annual event and this movement. So all sorts of outreach materials from educational activity pages for kids. Another great thing to have printed out, like and give away at a beach cleanup or have kids be occupied during a cleanup, to resources for recreational boaters on safe and smart boating practices, to a new network called the International Trash Trap Network, which is kind of our effort in moving into that space of stopping trash in waterways before it can even get into the ocean. So a lot of our inland upstream partners are very excited about this and are exploring all the amazing innovative technologies, sea bins, river beams, trash capture wheels, all sorts of these technologies that exist for bays and rivers in capturing trash, so that hopefully we can stop it before it's getting out into the ocean, where it becomes exponentially harder to collect and remove. Lastly, I did want to note a new exciting effort for us is this Team C's work. I know I'm probably getting close on time, but to give a little bit of a background, this is a campaign that was a fundraising campaign assisted primarily by a couple of YouTube influencers that it took place actually in fall of this past year, 2021. And the influencers, they had done a previous campaign called Team Trees, where they did a fundraiser to plant trees. And this effort, Team C's, we were lucky enough to be one of a couple of beneficiaries who, after the fundraiser, get to take those funds and implement the conservation effort and promise of that campaign, which was every dollar donated by people all over the world, we promised we'd remove 1 pound of trash from the coastal environment, from shorelines. That includes things like larger targeted debris removals, such as derelict, discarded fishing gear, large, heavy nets, derelict vessels, spots that are problematic that might not be conducive for a volunteer or a community cleanup, but still need some concerted volunteer effort and might need some more funding to get some of the machinery and technical assistance out to those places to do those types of cleanups. So I just wanted to mention that here in case that perks up your ears, or if any location in your community comes to mind, your country that comes to mind that could use some of this Team C's effort. It's an implementation timeline of a couple of years. So luckily it's not as short as the fundraising time of a few months. We have a few years now to make good on those promises, and Ocean Conservancy is working first with all of the international coastal cleanup partners that we have around the world and saying, hey, we have this awesome opportunity, and we need your help to point us to these particularly problematic shorelines that could use that cleanup effort. And speaking of community, my final slide, we would love to invite you to be a part of the International Coastal Cleanup event, whether it is just the one cleanup a year or just taking part whenever it works for you, utilizing those resources and letting us know if you want to be looped into the communications. Vess is a longtime partner from Vanuatu, leading cleanups there, and we love staying in touch with Christina and her team as just one example. And before the pandemic, we were really trying to get in-person meetings regionally and globally every couple of years, because we found that those meetings, even if it was just 1 day or two, were invaluable for information sharing and for working through challenges that are particular to certain regions and locations. So the image there is the last time we were able to convene in person right before the pandemic. This was our Caribbean network of ICC partners. And then since then, we've still been convening just over Zoom. So a screen grab there of kind of some of the chats that we do just to keep in touch with everyone, to share news, updates, information, funding opportunities, and just kind of, what's going on from the hub of the ICC to keep our network going strong. And we have a Facebook group too, if anyone's just more interested in kind of keeping it casual and talking one-on-one with others in the network that way. Tons of photo and information sharing in that regard too. I think that's all I have. I'll leave my email slide up for a moment, and I thank you for your time, and happy to answer any questions if we have them, or I think I might need to refer back to the moderators. So thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for this informative presentation and experience sharing on this wonderful initiative of this Coastal Cleanup Day. SWAP participated last year in this event by supporting 10 associations to do cleanups campaigns, and it was a very, very good initiative, and we received many positive feedback from these 10 associations. So thank you very much for this wonderful global initiative. Thank you. And just to remind to our participants, feel free to share your own experience on cleanups campaigns, or if you have other experience to share on activities that you are conducted for reduce marine litter. Feel free to use the chat, and we can discuss this after the presentation session. So our next speaker, Dr. Christina Shaw, will be able to highlight the work done by Ocean Conservancy as the Vanuatu Environmental Science Society is a member of the Ocean Conservancy. And Christina has been conducting cleanup operations for several years. So please, Christina, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay. So I'd just like to share the experience of doing community cleanups in Vanuatu with you. And first of all, I'd like to say, again, with what Julia said and what Sarah said, is what was the motivation behind me starting this. And this was a photo that I took whilst diving in Vanuatu, just off Port Vila. And obviously we could see firsthand the impact that the plastic pollution was having on our very close environment. So we, as well as running the Vanuatu Environmental Science Society, we are also owners of a dive shop in Vanuatu. And when we bought that, we started doing the Dive Against Debris programs, where we had asked volunteer divers to come and help us remove rubbish from the ocean. So we've done, and that was started in 2013. And this is some of the images that we've taken. So some of the rubbish that's been picked up, lots and lots of bottles and cans and various other things. Sorry, I've just skipped one. And then when we started VES in September 2014, one thing that we wanted to do is start engaging with the communities about environmental issues. So our organization is mostly focused on threatened species conservation. So we have projects for dugongs and flying foxes, but we also wanted to try and advocate for keeping our environment healthy. And one of the easiest and cheapest way of doing things, because we are a very small organization that has no core funding from anywhere. So one of the easiest ways is to do an environmental cleanup. It's a serious issue, and also anybody can become involved. You don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to have spent a lot of time doing it. It's quite easy to understand the concept. So that's why we chose to start with a cleanup on Environment Day and World Oceans Day in 2015. And we've been doing the cleanups ever since then. Sorry. And then the data collection, as you've been hearing again and again this morning or this afternoon, is really what we focus on. So you can do cleanups and cleanups and cleanups and cleanups, but that's not the solution. So what we want to do is be part of a solution, and we need to understand the problem. So we have the point of difference that I think we made it in when we started in Vanuatu is with collecting the data as we do the cleanups. And that data can be used at various different levels. You've heard Sarah say that the data from the global databases is used in many different places. So we contribute to that global database, but we also, the data is useful on a very local level as well, particularly for the participants that are involved in the cleanups. It's often quite eye-opening for them to see how much litter is actually on the streets, and then hopefully that will transition into behavioural change of people that have been taking part in these cleanups, but also on a national level as well. The Vanuatu was a leader in the Pacific in banning single-use plastics. The first plastic ban came in sorry, I'm trying to move my slides on, sorry. There we go. The first ban came in 2018, where we banned plastic shopping bags, plastic straws, and polystyrene takeaway containers. Initially, it was just thought about, let's ban the plastic bags, but our data actually helped persuade the politicians to include straws and polystyrene takeaway containers as well. So we didn't have huge amounts of data. We just have data from small cleanups, but that's enough to actually be able to influence the policy. And the effect of the bans was visible in particularly with those single-use shopping bags, which were all over the roadsides before the ban. So you can definitely see, people can see there's a difference. We got the international media coverage as well, which gave pride to people in Vanuatu for being leaders on the plastic pollution problem, particularly because we were the first country in the world to ban plastic straws. And then that also leads to promoting of materials that are locally made that are biodegradable, like this coconut water with its bamboo straw. But there were some unwanted results of the plastic ban. So instead of using plastic shopping bags for fruit and vegetables, these plastic meshes became ubiquitous and being used everywhere. And of course, they obviously turned up in our litter cleanups as well. So we were able to speak to the politicians for when the next ban came in, which happened the year afterwards, when more single-use plastic items were banned, and that included the plastic mesh and a lot of these other items that we used to find in our cleanups as well. So what I wanted just to share some top tips from being on the ground and doing the cleanups here in a Pacific Island nation. And one of the big things that I would definitely recommend to everybody is don't try and do it on your own. There's lots of really great organizations that are doing these cleanups. We have benefited a lot from being part of the International Coastal Cleanup community. Sarah and the team at the Ocean Conservancy, as you've seen from her presentation, have a lot of great tools that you can use. And it's a very supportive environment to be able to be part of the whole team. And there's also, like, they have their data sheets. I think I've got a data sheet on the next slide. They have their data sheets, and we've, although we have used the data sheets in the past, we actually have adapted the data sheet so it stays compatible with the international global databases, but we also have adapted slightly for our own needs. And sorry, my slides aren't moving forward. I'm not quite sure why, what we're doing, so I hope I'm not making people feel sick by flipping through them. But this is our data sheet. So we have it in our 3 national languages, Bishlama, English, and French. It's mostly pretty much follows the ICC data sheet, but we've adapted it a little bit to for the items that we particularly want to track in Vanuatu. And also the other thing we'd want to say is you don't have to be a huge organization. At the moment, there's 3 of us in our office, but yet our efforts and our data can make a difference in our own place. So yes, you don't need to be a huge, big organization with international collaborations. You can be part of a bigger group, but you can also make a difference on your own. And then just another top tip, I think Sarah mentioned it as well, but that information right at the top of the data sheet there of where, who, how many people, and so the information about the cleanup event itself, not just all the bits that were cleaned up, is really important. And that's the bit that most people don't fill in on the data sheets. So one top tip is make sure that you've got someone who's collecting the data sheets at the end that makes sure all of those bits are collected and filled in properly, because then you can record the unit of effort for each cleanup that you do and compare one to the other. And we also learned a little bit about what the barriers are for communities to participate. And really what we found in Vanuatu was we needed to provide everything for the communities. So we needed to provide the data sheets and the clipboards and the gloves. We've changed to reusable gloves so that we get them all back and wash them, so we're not adding to the plastic problem. But we need to provide everything. And one of the biggest impediments was rubbish collection, because the rubbish collection here in Port Vila is by the municipality, but it's a paid for collection. So it's a prepaid plastic bags. So people wanted to participate, but they didn't want the cost of having to get rid of the rubbish in the end. So that's one of the things that we found in Vanuatu that we need to address, is how the rubbish can get taken to the landfill or wherever it's appropriate to take to after the cleanup day itself. And then we'd also say, yes, publicize your events. So we try and put it on social media, in the local media as well. There's been short films done that have gone global. So we're trying to put the word out there. It's good for the awareness of the issue, but it also raises the organization's profile. So we get lots of other opportunities. So yes, the team C's, we've just got a little bit of funding from them to do a beach cleanup on one of the remoter beaches. We've also had funding from SPREP to participate in the coastal cleanups. Last year we got some funding to do a plastic bottle buyback, where we managed to collect 1.4 million plastic bottles in 3.5 days and send the cleaner ones for recycling for the first time in Vanuatu. So just from these small cleanups, starting these small cleanups, you can lead to other things that will have what might seem like a much bigger impact. But yeah, so even if you think you're a very small organization or just a few people, starting and getting the word out there that that's what you're doing, it can lead to other things that can have a huge impact. And I thought I'd just leave you with the reasons why we need to try and reduce our plastic pollution of the oceans. These are pictures from Vanuatu, and obviously we have a beautiful marine environment, and we would like to keep it beautiful and free from plastic pollution. So we're trying to do what we can to help with the solutions.
Thank you, Christina, with the sharing of this wonderful experience, and also with difficulties faced by communities regarding fundings and access to gloves and everything like this. But it's very wonderful to see how small activities and small actions can lead to national policy to ban single-use plastic. So it's a very wonderful experience. So thank you very much for the sharing. And yes, we can see that even small actions can help develop national or even regional policies to reduce marine litter and plastic pollution. So these last topics will be detailed by Camden. We will talk about how to conduct statistical waste audits to collect and share data. And also he will share lessons learned on their use as a decision-making tool. So thank you very much, and Camden, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, just double checking that you can see my screen.
Yes,
Good, and thank you for the Thank you, Julie. Yeah, kia ora, and thank you for the opportunity to speak again on this really important topic. I want to speak about quality monitoring that can inform decision-making for action to solve this problem long-term. So, I'm going to cover 3 key topics again in this presentation, and yeah, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Firstly, why should we monitor marine litter? And we've covered some of this through some of the speakers already. Secondly, what is litter intelligence and how exactly does it work? And then thirdly, and I think most importantly, what does success look like for programs like this? And I also just want to thank the previous speakers, Sarah and Christine, for your amazing work, and letting listeners know also that Sarah and I and our organizations have caught up and discussed the various different areas in which our programs can work together. And so there is collaboration going on in that space as well. And as you'll see, I think there are very unique use cases for both programs as well. So firstly, why would we monitor marine litter? Obviously, we know, and everyone here on this call will know, that litter is a problem. It affects cultures, health, economies, and ecosystems around the Pacific and around the world. So, why should we measure it? And this quote we come back to often is around why we cannot improve what we do not measure. And we know that we need to improve on what we're doing. We need to solve this problem. We also know globally that we lack standardized, reliable environmental data for decision making. And that concern about marine litter is really widespread. So we know that we need to act. And then on the other side of that is the strategic fit and the strategic reasons within this forum. I thought it would be important to remind us of as well. Under the Cleaner Pacific 2025 strategy, we noted that the extent of marine litter problem hasn't been comprehensively documented throughout the Pacific. And also that there are strategic goals and strategic actions that have been set regionally for monitoring the receiving environment and for setting up those best practice monitoring programs. And then further on that, the Pacific Regional Action Plan called for standardized data collection and analysis to be completed as well by Pacific Island countries and territories. And so obviously this is a regional action plan, and there will be national litter action plans for some of the countries and territories on this call. But I thought it might be a useful reminder to look at the sort of direction where we're headed and the need and requirement for this information, both for reporting and for quantifying sources to mitigate in the future these issues. So what is litter intelligence itself? I've covered this really briefly, but just as a recap, a citizen science and an education program to inspire and inform better decision-making for a world without litter. I would love, I'm actually at the beach that's in this photograph right here now, and this is, I think, the 3rd cleanest beach in Aotearoa, New Zealand, out of the 260 or 270 sites that we have groups monitoring. And I love this place. I would love to see every beach in New Zealand looking like this or better. And not only that, every beach around the Pacific or around the world looking like this. And just being able to take my son and daughter to the beach without worrying that they're going to eat cigarette butts or pick up a plastic bag and put it in their mouth. They're toddlers and they like to do that with everything. That's a key personal goal for me, but something that I think we can all relate to. So not only is it an education program and a citizen science program, it's a global collaboration. So I'll speak shortly to the methodologies themselves, and I'll just ask at the stage if the technical directors would be able to post the links into the chat, and that way you can explore those at your own leisure or later on. But initially it was launched, Litter Intelligence, as a voluntary commitment at the UN World Ocean Conference in 2017. It was an adaptation from a United Nations methodology. And I suppose the point here being is that there's global relevance and global urgency to solving these issues. but working in with a global system is something that we were really keen to do from the outset. And so we utilised that in the design phase of this project. And hopefully some of you on this call have seen this, some of this information before through the Clean Pacific Roundtable later on last year. In terms of nationwide and Aotearoa New Zealand, we worked initially with our Ministry for the Environment, our Statistics Department and the Department of Conservation to form the program. And the really critical part about that, as I mentioned previously, is getting buy-in at the design phase meant that the government agencies that were responsible for reporting on these problems were really bought into using those data, and that they could be then pushed up to the highest level of reporting, both nationally and internationally. We have those same partners still working on the program, and I think for us that was really important, is to keep that engagement of government agencies who have those abilities at the high level to make policy and in some cases infrastructure decisions that can have huge, wide sweeping and long lasting impacts on this problem. In terms of progress to date, I mentioned this just before, but I just want to pull attention to the fact that this program started as a beach litter monitoring program, and that's the core to what I'll speak to today. But recently we've expanded it out to work on stormwater and freshwater litter monitoring as well. As Sarah mentioned, you know, we're all here to stop this problem from getting to the ocean in the first place. Cleanups, and particularly cleanups of our open oceans, are very expensive, very time-consuming tasks. So we do want to stop this before it starts, and our litter monitoring programs for stormwater and freshwater allow us to intercept and also to measure and monitor what litter is making it into our oceans through those trajectories. So the methodology itself, really, as I mentioned before, it's an adaptation of the United Nations and an Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission methodology. We've worked with New Zealand's government agencies to make that locally relevant. So sometimes that's involved changing some litter categories, much as Christine mentioned, making it locally focused. And the key that it aims to measure in terms of monitoring objective is change in litter over time. So litter flux, and the idea behind the program is that we can go back to each site over the years and understand if the mitigation measures we've put in place have worked, if the bans, product changes, actions taken at a community level, if they have worked, and where we need to prioritize action. As I mentioned, it's globally comparable, given it's a UNEP methodology, and allows for reporting on the SDGs, specifically SDG 14.1.1, which relates to floating plastic litter. It's rigorous, produces really high quality data, and it's great for citizen science. So we've made some amendments to it to make it even easier for that. So the monitoring process itself first starts with the training and the provision of sort of standardized equipment sets. Hopefully some of you on this call were involved back in September for International Coastal Cleanup Day in an online workshop that we ran through SWAP, thanks to Julie. And once that training has been provided, the groups, the citizen scientists, community groups, schools, local businesses, anyone that's keen to be involved are the ones that implement this on the ground. They set up a survey area. So as opposed to being a full beach cleanup, this works really well alongside beach cleanups, but effectively is setting up a 100 metre long by 20 metre wide strip following the high tide line and surveying just that particular area. And that's the area that our citizen scientists go back to and survey repeatedly, so 4 times a year, to really understand that change over time. Ocean currents, winds, weather, and obviously plastics leaking into the ocean are all going to have a big impact on the litter that we find at those sites. So the repeatability is really a crucial part of the process. So the survey area is set up. Effectively, some sticks and some measuring tapes is enough to make that happen. Set out that area and then survey and remove the litter from that area. That litter normally then gets moved inside, somewhere sheltered away from the wind, and we audit that and break that into both item count and weight for every litter category. And the weight is a really interesting comparison, I suppose, with item count, because you obviously have different material types that weigh a lot more, and others that are much more prevalent in item count. Often, I know in New Zealand this is the case, but internationally we've seen it as well. Those two measures are really important to be able to provide two different views of the data. So the technology itself, we've sort of taken a slightly different approach to Ocean Conservancy, I suppose, and moved away from an app. I know there are a lot of benefits of having an app as well, and we went a slightly different approach, which was to develop a website that could be simply used across various different devices. And one thing that may be a benefit of that is that we don't require any downloading or updating of that app. It's simply a URL on the website. Works offline. You just need a connection to submit the data itself. And as with Sarah and her mention of the Tides database, it's open access data, and it's really, really great to see so many organizations embracing open data access, because in the end, as a community submitting data, those are your data. They belong to you, and you should have open and immediate access to them. We also have the facility to download all of the raw data in a spreadsheet for further analysis, or conduct the exploration, comparison analysis of data through the website itself, which has some really, really cool tools for being able to do that. A few quick insights from what we're seeing within that data set. As you can imagine, majority of what we're finding, over 67%, are plastics. If you then add in foamed plastic, it ends up being around about 3/4 of what we're finding on beaches across Aotearoa New Zealand are plastics. And one thing that we see, that which is a way to, I suppose, understand density and prevalence of litter, is our litter density. And so on average per 1,000 square meters across the different survey sites, 280 or so survey sites across the country, we're seeing around 319 items for every 100 meter by 10 meter section of the beach. So a lot of you may have a perception that New Zealand is pure, clean and green. I know I probably did coming into this, but that's a lot of items of litter on a very small stretch of beach. And it's one way for us to be able to measure progress on this cause as well. We've built into the program, and this is part of the UNEP methodology, a series of data quality measures, and some of those are for anyone involved in data analysis or reporting on the call, really, really rigorous, and allow for that data to be used at that high environment reporting level by governments, and for example, sustainable development goal reporting. So we have a series of quality assurance and quality control measures. Those are all available on the website, litterintelligence.org. And those give the statisticians and those government entities looking to interrogate the data, and academic papers looking to publish the data, they give them the confidence that those data are robust, that they are scientifically rigorous, even though they've been collected by citizen scientists who are not trained scientists. We're just members of the community following a really robust methodology and protocol. So it gives the high level reporting agencies confidence that they can use those data to make decisions, and that's really, really important. A part of that is having a data dictionary to be able to understand the data, an open data policy, which protects those data from being locked away long term. So we have a policy which says that they'll be freely and openly available long term to anyone submitting. and we have a data governance group which involves those government entities to make sure that any changes that are made or adaptations that are made to the data collection process go through a proper peer review process, and that the scientific rigor of those data remain really, really strong. So these are some of the measures that we've put in place to increase that scientific rigor. Another measure and quite a fun project that we've been working on with Microsoft is to use image recognition to help us categorize data. So as citizen scientists submit data, they're able to take a photo of the litter in a container, like you can see on the screen here, and machine learning or artificial intelligence helps the app to recognize what type of litter that is. We're hoping, it's still in progress, we're hoping that this could be a really both fun and time-saving activity to help build that data quality and remove some of the tasks for citizen scientists manually identifying and counting items. So as you can see, it doesn't work all of the time at the moment, so it's still improving the model, and another exciting sort of development in that space. So most importantly, what does success look like? And you'll see I'm sharing a photo of our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, on this slide. And the reason for that is that we were invited in October 2018 to the launch of New Zealand's plastic bag ban. And in the consultation documents and the public petitions that were that preceded the plastic bag ban, our data were used to build evidence for the rationale behind the ban. And that was really inspiring. And I think one other important thing to mention is, the data were really, really influential there, but the stack of papers that Jacinda Ardern is holding in this photo are actually letters from school students, a lot of whom mentioned not only our organisation, but the names of some of our staff who had been in to speak with the school students and who were so inspired to take action that they wrote letters to the Prime Minister asking for measures to reduce marine litter pollution. So this is something we're really proud of. There are great stories. Jacinda pulled out some examples to show to the students, some of whom at this event had actually written those letters and helped to influence that ban. So I just want to make the point that data is so important, but alongside that, it's so important that we engage the community in those activities to collect the data because of the amazing influence that can also have. If there's anything politicians love, it's an opportunity for a photo shoot with school kids. I can tell you that. So that was one really, really nice example. A second one was the use of those data in our National Environmental Reporting Scheme. So for the first time in October 2019, the data from Litter Intelligence were the first time that citizen science collected data were able to be used for national environmental reporting. So that's a huge win for communities. It means that we take the power back from simply scientists and paid contractors being able to influence policy to communities being able to collect data and enter it into environmental reporting at a national level. And that's at that highest reporting level. From that report in November 2019, the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor took those data and put them in a series of recommendations for rethinking plastics in Aotearoa. That went into consultation for policy change, and then in June last year, we had the government committing to a ban of, I think, 7 different single-use plastics by 2025. These are incredible, long-lasting policy changes that come from engagement with government entities and providing the right level of rigorous data to prove the problem. So we're really proud of those. I've got a couple of slides here speaking to those policy actions in particular. And you'll see on this slide and on the next, we have the top 40 categories from those items collected through the Litter Intelligence program and a database. And you see areas where bans have been put in place. And so while you can see there's a lot of work to do still, it shows you how we can put pressure on decision makers using data and evidence to create policy change. At the top two here, the biggest items we find, we have likely affected by policy action, a large set of recommendations that are under consultation right now that we hope to see change the fragments of plastics and glass that we're finding all over our beaches from disappearing. Bottle caps and lids, unidentifiable soft plastic fragments. These are items that we're already starting to see reducing on our beaches. And you can see plastic bags here, which has already been banned, sitting at number 21. This used to sit at about 8% of our total items. It's sitting at 0.8% now, only 2 or 3 years after that ban has come into place. So, we're really interested in tracking how these policy changes end up influencing litter on beaches so that we can incentivize more of that action, better long-term decision-making to really solve this issue long-term. There's a lot in there now, and I'll circulate this slide deck to take a look later on. And then finally, on the international reporting front, as I mentioned, the methodology being a United Nations Environment Programme methodology allows us to submit data at the highest level to the Sustainable Development Goal reporting. The program was featured in New Zealand's first voluntary national review, He Waka Eke Noa, the report on the left-hand side, in 2019. And we've had a number of academic papers and journals publish information about the program and its applicability to Sustainable Development Goal reporting. I think this paper on the right-hand side here listed litter intelligence as one of only 5 programs globally that are enabling currently communities to monitor and report progress against the Sustainable Development Goals. So, we're really excited about that. We think that has some really great potential, not just in Aotearoa, New Zealand, but around the Pacific Islands long-term. And just to sort of end on some next steps, as I mentioned, we've been working with Statistics New Zealand and our Ministry for the Environment on environmental reporting through citizen science. We're building up the rigor for that to create a tier 1 indicator for litter. Some of you on this call will know what that is, probably far better than I. And also to report on well-being indicators. Volunteering has a lot of spin-off effects, including those on mental health and connection to nature. But we're also able to report on some missing data that the government doesn't have through this program. We're developing better online tools, and a Train the Trainer program is already up and running in New Zealand. So we're teaching others to teach communities the program, and building online learning tools that will allow people to study from afar and ideally gain these skills to roll out within their own country or territory. And so we'd love to hear from you and work with you going forward. My contact details are here, and I'd love to thank you all for your attention and really encourage any contact following this. Cheers.
Thank you very much, Camden, with this very interesting presentation, and thank you to all our speakers for their informative and detailed presentation. So now we can start the last session of our workshop, and we can discuss about the presentations, our lessons learned, and share your own experience in marine litter clean management. So I saw some interesting question from Carlos Noronha, sorry if I mispronounce your name, about the taxation of plastic. So the question was, is there an idea of taxing plastic, and what is our thoughts at SPREP regarding this question? So maybe Tony, if you want to provide more information, but there is no discussion at SPREP regarding taxation of plastic. It's more like the development of container deposit system or or extended producer responsibility. So it's not a taxation, it's more a fund that is used after to recycle plastic. So it's not a taxation. But if you want to share your thoughts on this issue and this question, please feel free to take the floor. Or Tony, if you want to provide information as well on this question.
Hi, Julie, I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Sorry?
Did you ask me a question?
Yeah, the question was if SPREP is thinking about taxing the plastic importation or.
All right. No, I think this is an area that's new. We haven't done that yet. But however, you know what, we've been working with countries on the advanced recovery fee and deposit. So that will, in a way, or in a sense, is already being done through those levies. Huh? So you know there is a levy on that we're proposing for PET bottles. There was that levy in Fiji for the plastic bags, for the use of plastic bags. But maybe that's something that countries can consider, is packaging and the other plastic products that are being used or are supposed to be used for meat, for other things. But now you see them being wrapped for vegetables and for coconuts and for everything else. So maybe that's something for countries to consider that can be included into the ARF, the advanced recovery fee and deposit legislations that are being considered.
Thank you. So I see there is a question from Christina. So Christina, if you want to have the floor.
Actually, it wasn't a question. It was mainly to respond to the discussion about taxes. So we've been involved in the working group looking at container deposit schemes in Vanuatu for beverage containers. And one of the big issues was that if it's a tax and not just a sort of standalone deposit fund, then what's the guarantee that the money collected will actually go into solving the problem of plastic pollutions? And if it goes straight into consolidated revenue, where is it actually going to go? Is it actually going to solve the problem, or is it just going to increase the cost? So that's one of the issues certainly in like developing countries where revenue isn't huge. We were advocating for a standalone fund where you know that the money is going to be used to actually solve the problem, and not just end up in consolidated revenue where it's not going to where it may or may not come out to solve the plastic problems. So yeah, there's a lot of different policies that are available from taxing or container deposit schemes or other incentives to change materials. So yeah, it's not a simple topic.
Yeah, thank you about your thoughts on that. And yes, of course, and especially when the income is not very important, so it can increase the cost of products. So yeah. So I don't know if there is other question or thoughts. I saw a comment from Donna Order, but unfortunately, I think she left the meeting because I wanted her to share her thoughts. It was about the engagement of communities or people, especially in small island states. So just I wanted to share the experience from Wallis and Futuna, because Wallis is a very small island. They have around 12,000 inhabitants in Wallis. And last year when we did the International Coastal Cleanup Day, we had 5 associations from Wallis engaged in this event. So it's not depending on the scale of the islands, but yes, the engagement of people. We had church associations, 1 college, and 1 association, a paddling association. So it's just people engagement. So it was to share this experience. It's not depending on this the fact that this island is small or not, but just people engagement. Yeah. So I don't know if there is other comments or sharing this experience.
I was just going to comment, Julie, it's Camden here from Sustainable Coastlines again, just on that same taxation question. The policy review slides that I showed had a couple, several items shown that were in our top 40 in red, and the reason for that was that there is a container deposit legislation consultation process happening in New Zealand right now, and globally where these have been put in place, they've been shown to reduce container related or beverage related litter. So we're really looking forward to seeing that, so that we can start to see the results on the beach, because there were, I think, 7 or 8 different categories within the top 40 for us that are related to beverage litter. Yeah, so that'll be the positive impact of taxation. I'm just hoping the money goes to the right places.
Thank you, Camden, for your thoughts on that. And I see, Tony, you would like to have the floor, so please.
Yes, Julie, thank you. I was just thinking when Camden and Sarah were presenting, was that, it's so nice what they're doing, and it's very effective. And it's very effective in New Zealand and in Vanuatu, where Christina is. I was just thinking that, we have lots of people linked into the workshop, and I'm sure the young people and the communities are thinking, how can we be part of sustainable coastlines, for example, Camden, or Ocean Conservancy, for example, Sarah? Can they do that? Are they able to be like an outlet of sustainable coastlines, an outlet of Ocean Conservancy? Maybe just out of interest, is that possible? And what would they need to do to help make that a reality for them? Thank you.
Camden, I'll go ahead first, if that's all right.
Yeah, you go.
Thank you, Anthony, for that question. I guess the short answer is absolutely. We see it all the time with the International Coastal Cleanup, that oftentimes it's youth taking charge in their communities, and they're the ones actually organizing the events. I think it's part of the reason why a lot of the materials that we create are, simple to read, kind of cartoon heavy like that, so that it's inviting children of all ages to feel empowered and feel like they can plan this, even if it's just a small cleanup with their siblings. It all makes a difference. So we welcome it all, absolutely. Usually when we hear from youth, we'll try to connect them with if we have an existing country coordinator, we'll connect them with them just to make sure that they can get some of the resources that those partners offer. Like Christina mentioned, like they do such a great job of offering things like the data cards that are local to them, things like trash bags that they might need, gloves, other items. We do our best to actually ship boxes to youth when we can, to encourage them and get them excited and motivated. But oftentimes they get a lot more and a lot more location specific items from the partner themselves. So unfortunately, OC, sometimes we're 1 or 2 steps removed, but we love to engage with youth. We even have like a kid-friendly data card. If some of the items, obviously during cleanups, we were not telling kids to pick up things like glass or syringes or anything else that they might come across, because as we all know, you name it, and it's been found at a cleanup before. So we do kind of create like kid-friendly data cards as well. Yeah, I'll stop there. Definitely welcome.
Yeah, and cheers for that, Sarah. I think just to sort of back up the Ocean Conservancy's work, I think the simplicity of the program there and the ease of engagement there is a really major and important point for groups like that to be able to pick up and take on. Yeah, we love likewise working with youth. Any youth that get in touch with us, we love to support. I think around about a quarter of the citizen science groups, community groups around our country are actually schools themselves, school students or classrooms, and they then need a bit of support from their teachers, who we tend to support as well. So I think in terms of picking up the litter intelligence program, I suppose like Sarah and like Ocean Conservancy, there are resources on our website. I think there's a link sent to that, to the methodology and documents there. There is an ad hoc sort of a data entry mode through the technology, which allows users who haven't gone through proper training and don't have the equipment to submit data. But we prefer, when we work at a high level for statistical reporting, to be able to provide that training as well. So we're in conversations with SPREP and SWAP around how we might be able to provide that remotely. But absolutely encourage youth to get as involved as possible in this. We see so much benefit out of little citizen scientists running around doing their thing, and then inspiring their leaders up to the Prime Minister to take big long-term action. So absolutely support that kaupapa.
Thank you very much. So Andrew, you have a question, so please, you have the floor.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Bulavanaka, everyone. Very, very interesting and informative discussions today. Thank you, Julie and Tony, and the presenters, Sarah, Camden, and Christina. I am a marine plastic pollution researcher here at the University of the South Pacific in Fiji. So I'm all too aware of some of the acute issues in terms of plastic marine pollution here in the Pacific. I think we're years behind where we should be in terms of the body of research that we can draw from. And two, it's quite a vast research gap in that as well, spanning across the Pacific. So we're trying to increase the amount of marine plastic pollution research there is out there. And any help we can get would be really appreciated. Just a few pointers. I'm just going to share a bit of my experience, and there might be one or two questions that come out of it. For Christina and Camden, we have a similar project as well at USP, where we are looking to one, clean up our coastal environment, and two, to catalog and characterize some of the waste that we're collecting. So I am all too aware of it being a very inglorious task. Some of the waste we sort through is toxic, it's nasty, and it just can be disgusting sometimes. So it can be a bit of a task, and I'm sure you two are both really aware of the issues. Just in terms of the database and the differences in the database. So we started our coastal cleanup campaign about 4 months ago. And this was born out of conversations we had with the CFAS team. And Christine, you might be aware of them because they published some papers on marine litter characterizations in Vanuatu and the Solomons. So we're using their protocols, which is the European protocols, called the OSPA protocols. Although it doesn't, at first glance, it doesn't seem very, very well suited to Pacific Island waste. And I mean, even the Pacific, there's lots of discrepancies between the types of waste in Vanuatu, Fiji, Solomons, Samoa, so on. So yeah, it'd be good if we had a database of our own. And at Christina, I'd like to see the common types of marine litter you're collecting there as well. So there's no real database that suits us, but I guess that is a work in progress, and we can try and swap notes on that and see if we can try and develop a database that works well for us in the Pacific. I'm aware of the Tangaroa Blue. I've recently been made aware, thanks Camden, of the intelligent, sorry, I have it somewhere here. litter intelligence. There's the IOC protocol, then OSPA. So, I mean, in terms of database discrepancies, it'd be good if we in the Pacific had one for our own. Something we can also call our own. So I'll be happy to talk to Camden, Sarah, and Christina a bit more about the work that we do and try and gain some insights on what you guys are doing. Sarah, we'd be happy to know that we also have a CBIN and have been in touch with Dr. Chelsea and the ITTN team in the University of Toronto. So again, that's a different database that we have to use as well. So it adds to my point that there is no Pacific-based database that we can draw from yet. So any insights or any discussions from this would be really appreciated on my behalf. Binaka.
Thank you, Andrew, for your comments on this issue. So just for information, SWAP, Fiji is a SWAP member country.
Seems like we may have a quick technical issue. We'll go ahead and give Julie a moment to reconnect. She usually does reconnect in just a minute here.
If it's all right, I can hop in and I just wanted to comment, Andrew, briefly to the point that you made, which is a really important one and a great one that Ocean Conservancy has discussed with Sustainable Coastlines a number of times, along with other partners. And it's this age-old question of, can we get this unified, or can we get standardized data? There are a couple of global platforms that exist, but I agree with you that having your region-wide or having the specific data that work for you, I mean, to Christina's point about they have the data card that works for them in Vanuatu, and then it can still feed into like the ICC database. So at least from our standpoint, from the global standpoint, we take data in just about any format possible. Like we can pull it from the Litter Intelligence website, we can take it from different data cards, all sorts of formats. And that's a lot of what our team does, is just working to have it fit as seamlessly as we can into our global data set for that large geographic review. But you're collecting really detailed, great granular data that's important to your region. So that's where our database falls short, right? We're trying to kind of find that global balance, that happy medium, but it makes total sense. And it feels like it's a conversation that comes up every year. There's always conversations about new global databases being made. It's a little bit of kind of like recreating the wheel, to be completely honest with you. But to have a region specific one, I think is an important idea and thought.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Sarah. I think we've sort of had that internal battle a lot, is how specific and how granular do we get, how localized do we get, do we look at specific regions within the country of Aotearoa and split those out, or do we keep a national piece versus a regional or global piece? Because, as you know, I think the issue changes wherever you are. So open to, I put my my contact details in the chat there, Andrew, if you'd like to reach out. But yeah, it's one that we're all grappling with for sure.
I guess from my experience of using other people's data cards and what have you, we are using the International Coastal Cleanup data card specifically, but we've altered it a little bit. What we do find is if there is always an option for items of local concern, so you can always add things on the back. So we have a basically at the bottom of the sheet, it says turn over and write anything extra you find. And then we have our own Excel spreadsheet, which has everything that has ever been picked up. And that also all goes up to the global database. But we do find that if we're finding that people note down something in particular, then we'll put it onto the data card, because people are more likely to record it if it's actually an item that's listed, rather than writing it down. So one of the things that we did pull out was we added juice boxes and milk boxes, which we were finding a lot. And that's also a subject of maybe that should be included or shouldn't be included in the container deposit scheme for beverages. So that's why we added it as an actual item rather than just a one that you can add on at the write down on the back of the data sheet. So generally speaking, we find using somebody else's data sheets is pretty good. They've covered most of what you need to cover and thought about pretty much everything else. And as you said, there's been, Sarah says, and there's been a lot of discussion at a level where people are working on it all the time to get the databases right. And it's the same with the underwater cleanups as well. There was a huge discussion about what should be on the data sheet and what shouldn't. So generally speaking, I think using those global data sets it pretty much covers most of what you need, but you can just tweak it a little bit for the local issues. The other thing that we added onto the data sheets was shoes and clothes, because we just find flip-flops everywhere. And that's what people wanted to add. But otherwise, it's really only 1 or 2 items that we've added in, and we keep everything else on it. Even if we very rarely find, I think, cigar tips or something that's on the list, very rarely, but we keep it in there just in case someone does, and it's in the part of the global data set. So generally speaking, we find it works pretty well. And we don't need to put a lot of effort into it, because these guys at OC and Sustainable Coastlines have been working on it for years and years and years. So we'll benefit from their work.
All right, yeah, thanks guys. That's very much appreciated. And I'd love to continue the conversation with you guys sometime soon. Tanaka.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sorry we arrived at the end of this workshop. Tony, if you want to share the last comment or last question, please, and then we will close the workshop. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Julie. And yeah, I think that discussion on the data is a very interesting one. And I just wanted to let you know, Andrew and others, that the Pacific Ocean Litter project is going to do exactly that. It will explore what a database for the Pacific could look like. And we've talked it already with Camden and with Ocean Conservancy about what that upcoming work. So that's going to happen, and we'll be very much, I think that we will consult yourself and everyone else about it and what that would look like. But I just recall the first time we did the International Coastal Cleanup in 2015, from the very first one, we adapted the Ocean Conservancy form to suit us. So it began right from the start. You automatically say, okay, maybe that's not applicable. I'm not going to have that in. I'm going to have more of this. And we did it right from the start. So yes, I do agree. And I think we may have a chance to do that this year. If not this year, then early next year. Julie, thank you. And thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Tony. So I'm sorry it's time to stop, to end this workshop. So maybe just before we stop, if I can request you to assess the workshop so we can do better next time. So Hermes shared on the chat the link to the to the survey. So you can use it. Maybe Hermes, if you want to say something before. So I will let the floor to Tony for the closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Julie, thank you very much for that. I think maybe the last remark should be from you, but I think on behalf of our Director General, Stephanie Nawandra, we'd like to thank the presenters. Thank you very much, Camden, Sarah, and Christina for the presentations. It was very informative. I think from the chat, we could see that there were a lot of interest and lots of comments from the participants. I can see that many of the participants are those that will be taking part and have taken part in the cleanups last year or the previous years. And we hope that this has provided you information to inspire you to continue and maybe to inspire others as well. So through our Director General and on behalf of Julie and myself, we'd like to thank you all. And we hope that you have a pleasant day. Thank you. Over to you, Julie.
Thank you very much, Tony, for the closing remarks, and thanks to our speakers for their presentations and all of you for attending this workshop. So as mentioned in the introduction, the SWAP project will be offering training on how to prepare and conduct a cleanup campaign, audit and data sharing. So we will let you know when the date is confirmed, and I look forward to seeing you at this training. It will be delivered in English, and we will have another session in French. So we will not have an interpretation, but two different sessions for French speakers and English speakers. So I wish you a good day. And if you are willing, we will end the workshop with a video produced in Wallis and Futuna during the International Coastal Cleanup Day 2021 with the support of the Foyer socio-éducatif of MUA Lavegawo College. So I'm very sorry for the pronunciation, but yes, please, if you have 3 or 5 minutes more, you can share this video with us. And so thank you very much for attending this workshop, and see you soon. Bye. Have a nice day.
On verra si on arrive à accomplir cet objectif, c'est notre objectif. Donc c'est un objectif ça purement de nettoyage. Pour ça, il y aura 2 équipes de 10 à peu près, d'accord.
Le premier objectif, c'est de sensibiliser les jeunes de notre association à la protection de l'environnement et puis à la gestion des déchets. Les faire participer aussi à une action concrète de bonne action, une action de nettoyage, et puis leur permettre aussi de passer un bon moment tous ensemble. On s'est mis quand même d'accord sur les districts sur lesquels on allait chacun intervenir, et puis on a communiqué les différentes zones sur lesquelles on pensait travailler. Ce matin, on a nettoyé le bord de mer au village sur lequel est situé le collège, donc le village de Vanuatu.
C'est que les gens jettent beaucoup de déchets et ça pollue la nature. Donc on voudrait la préserver.
Des filets, des barres de fer, des bouteilles de partout. Je ne pensais pas qu'il y avait autant de déchets dans mon village déjà. C'est catastrophique.
J'habite sur une île et de plus en plus j'ai remarqué que le climat a changé et aussi pour nos îles surtout. Il y a l'érosion et l'augmentation du niveau de l'eau. C'est pas bon pour nous. Et aussi pour le recyclage des déchets, c'est très important aussi pour nos îles.
On a divisé le nombre d'élèves qu'on avait en 3 groupes. Un groupe de scientifiques, qu'on a surnommé scientifiques, un deuxième groupe qu'on a appelé chasseurs 1 et un troisième groupe qu'on a appelé chasseurs 2. Les chasseurs étaient ceux qui devaient ramasser en dehors du périmètre qui était dédié au ramassage pour les scientifiques, parce que c'était quelque chose de particulier. Et dans chaque groupe, on a demandé à des binômes d'élèves. Par exemple, un groupe devait ramasser le verre, un groupe devait ramasser le métal et un groupe devait ramasser le plastique. Et enfin, le dernier groupe devait ramasser tout ce qui n'était pas métal, plastique et verre. On a essayé au début d'avancer en ligne, mais c'est plus compliqué parce qu'au fait, on a remarqué que du côté plage, il n'y avait pas autant de déchets que cela, alors que du côté mangrove, il y en avait beaucoup. Donc finalement, on était plus sur les terres que bord de plage.
On a ramassé les sacs plastiques, les bouts de verre, les métaux, et toutes sortes de déchets.
On a ramassé des déchets en métal, en plastique. Ce qui m'a plus choqué, c'est qu'on a trouvé des brosses à dents, des bougies, avec des piles.
Ce matin, on a peut-être ramassé, je sais pas, 2 ou 3 mètres cubes, je pense. Ouais, 2 mètres cubes, je pense, de déchets ce matin, à peu près. Les agents du CET sont passés ce matin à 11 h au collège pour récupérer les déchets qu'on avait ramassés ce matin. Et puis cet après-midi, on est venu nettoyer l'îlot Nukuifala.
message pour que les gens gèrent leurs déchets, c'est qu'ils peuvent ramasser les déchets déjà autour de chez eux et les trier.
La première chose, c'est de ne pas jeter les déchets dans leur environnement, mais les collecter et puis essayer de faire le tri qui est possible de faire à l'endroit où ils sont, s'il y a un système de tri qui est mis en place.
Ne jetez pas par terre, premièrement. Ne jetez rien par terre. Mettez tout à la poubelle. Et surtout, triez. Triez, c'est le plus simple.
Mon message pour moi, c'est de bien garder leurs déchets, de trier leurs déchets. Aussi de faire attention parce que ça pollue la nature.